Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 25th session of the AIM Prime program. Today's session is on operations and manufacturing, and our speaker for today is Mr. Ravi Sarangapani. Welcome again, Ravi, to the session. And without further ado, requesting you to begin your session. Ravi, you're on mute.
Thank you, Magda. Good afternoon, good evening to everybody. Let me just share my screen.
Yeah, hello, Ravi.
Yes, hi, Prem.
Your slides are now on full screen. Yeah.
Yes, I just managed to. Yeah, there's this small little strip of Zoom which sort of comes and sticks itself in front of the PowerPoint icons.
yeah. You if you roll up on top, it will come down.
Yeah. I was just getting that out of the way. So once again, thanks. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this 25th session. Where we're going to get a little bit of understanding about manufacturing and operations as a prelude to what some of you, or hopefully a number of you, would be moving into at some point once you are in a position to establish your technology. So this talk is broken up into 2 or 3 segments. We'll start by looking at some key concepts, definitions, just to make sure we all get aligned and we're on the same page when we are referring to certain terms. And we'll also look at how manufacturing strategy aligns itself to overall business strategy. We'll then move on to investing, the implications of investing in manufacturing. It's not as simple as it seems, and there are significant implications, and we will look at some of them. And we'll also look at various options which are available to, from a commercialization point of view, to move into operations and manufacturing. So we'll look at different options. We'll then, to conclude the last segment, we'll look at key responsibilities and imperatives that are very important for an organization if you're getting into commercialization of a product or a technology. The talk is going to be interspersed with a couple of question breaks. So I'll actually welcome all of you to start posting questions that you may have. There's one question break pretty early in the session after the first 7-8 slides, once we get past concepts. So any questions that you have latent in your mind related to this topic, not necessarily questions relating to what I speak about, but questions which you may have in your mind, feel free to post them as we go along, and we'll have a break coming up pretty soon, and that's where we can address them. We'll also have a couple of polls to make things interesting, where I would like to seek your opinion, your views on certain aspects, and once we have those views, we'll then proceed to look at implications and pros and cons of different courses of action. So we'll start with certain key concepts and definitions, starting with what or who is an OEM. So an OEM is an original equipment manufacturer, which would typically, in this context, it would be you. That is the intent. Your intent as a startup is one of the intents as a startup. If you're not intending to license your technology or move out from at a pre-commercialization stage itself, would be to go on and become an original equipment manufacturer. Okay, so that's you. And technically and from a compliance perspective, you would be, or the company or the organization that you form would be the legal entity responsible for placement of a product, device, or service on the market. Okay, and this would be under your own name. If you are an OEM, it's going to be under your own name and style, which is what becomes your it's also synonymous with your brand. And that's why the terms OEM and brand are sort of used synonymously. And remember, as an OEM or as a brand, you would be responsible for all commercial, legal, and regulatory and any other compliances that are required. Okay, so that's what an OEM or a brand is. So let's look at what is manufacturing. So manufacturing typically involves the conversion of raw materials to finished products. Okay, but if you want to understand the term manufacturing, it's not just the conversion of raw materials to finished products. Manufacturing in the context of an organization would involve all the processes employed in this conversion, and more importantly, the overall management and the management organization that is put in place to manage all these processes to achieve targeted outcomes. Okay, so to achieve targeted outcomes, which in the case of manufacturing are typically output, cost, and productivity. So processes employed in the conversion of raw materials to finished products and the overall management of these processes to achieve targeted outcomes of output, cost, and productivity. Operations is a little bit more. So if you step back from manufacturing, you'll understand that operations is a more holistic term. It's the management of all processes employed in business fulfillment. So what is business fulfillment? Okay, so everything that needs to be done other than once you have an order, let's put it that way. Okay, so if you have an order and you have to fulfill that order, everything that you need to do to fulfill the order, starting from raw material procurement to shipment of finished products and everything that goes in between. So obviously, manufacturing, vendor development, sourcing, getting parts in, assembling those parts and making sure that the organization is functioning, storing your finished goods inventory, organizing your logistics, organizing the movement of material, and everything to the point of sale or to the point of consumption. Okay, so and remember, it's the management of all of this. So the management of all processes employed in business fulfillment, starting from raw material to shipment of finished products to the point of sale or consumption. Again, there's always an objective, okay, and the objective here is to meet monthly planned budgets. So that would be operations, and as you can understand from this definition, manufacturing is a subset of operations. Two other terms which you will frequently come across in the context of manufacturing and operations is supply chain and logistics. And these terms are sometimes used synonymously, but there is a difference between the two. So if you look at what is considered as a supply chain, so the organization management processes engaged in overall sourcing of materials, components, intermediates, and products, and the processing and delivery of goods to the point of consumption or sale. So if you look at your overall operation as a conveyor belt, okay, and that's the synonym with a chain. And on this conveyor belt, you have got stuff that is moving all the time. You have parts that are moving all the time from a vendor to your factory. You have sub-assemblies that are moving from another tier 1 manufacturer or tier 1 vendor to your factory. And then within the factory, you have parts that are moving from one point to the other and moving into stores. And then from stores, you have finished goods that are moving to distributors. And from distributors, you have goods which are flowing to an end customer. So there's a continuous flow or a continuous movement of either parts or components or intermediates or finished products that is taking place. And this continuous movement is called as a supply chain. And to organize all of this and to manage all of this, there's an organization which has to work to manage all of these, and all of this comes under the umbrella term or understanding of supply chain. That's the supply chain. Now, what's logistics? Logistics is two specific components within the supply chain. So when you have such a lot of movement going on, you have you have the physical aspect of moving things. Okay, so movement of parts or components or finished goods from point A to point B. And then in between all of this movement taking place, there is also storage that's happening at various points. So storage may be you have parts that come in to your plant or to your manufacturing facility, and those parts are being held in some kind of quarantine while inspection is taking place. Okay, so that is part and parcel of your logistics organization, because that is storage. And of course, the movement from the vendor to your manufacturing facility is also part of logistics. So it's the specific subset relating to movement and storage, which is a subset of the overall supply chain organization, is what you understand as logistics. So that is supply chain and logistics. And now we'll come to the last two terms. Again, these are terms which are sometimes used synonymously, but there is a little bit of difference between these, and we'll understand what it is. So we generally, when we refer to a vendor, a vendor is any supplier of materials, supplier of components, which your operation may require, or your final product may require, supplier of parts. A vendor may also supply service. Your photocopying machine is serviced by somebody, and he's a vendor as well. If you have a factory and you're running some machines and you need consumables, tools, lubricants, oil, all of this, that's a vendor as well. And your humble pen, pencil, and computer ribbons, and laser cartridges, and toners, and so on, which you use in the office, that's a vendor as well. Okay, so vendor is a term for somebody who is supplying anything, including components which you may require. However, a contract manufacturer is I would say, a term that is higher up the chain. So a vendor who performs all the functions of a manufacturer for an OEM. Okay, so this is the kind of vendor who's sort of taking on a much bigger responsibility, where you say that I am not going to physically manufacture this product myself, but will you, as my vendor, produce this product for me as if it was yours, and I have nothing to do with it other than telling you exactly what you need to produce. And so then this vendor has the manufacturing capacity, has the machines, procures the raw material to specifications which you have provided, carries out all those manufacturing operations and manufacturing processes in the quantities which you are demanding on a particular basis, and creating finished products, completing all the last and final operations, which may include inspection and tests which you have specified, completes the packaging to specifications which you have provided, completes, if necessary, sterilization if it's a medical product, and all of this done to your requirements. And may even on occasion take over the job, the supply chain responsibility of moving these products to the point of sale. Okay, so that is the ultimate that a contract manufacturer can fulfill. And that's a contract manufacturer. Okay, and obviously, as you can see, there's a very significant difference between a partner whom you would designate as a vendor, a partner whom you would designate as a contract manufacturer. Moving on to strategy. So what is strategy? Okay, and I'm sure you've had this definition thrown at you at various points of time, but the simplest one that I like to share is a strategy is nothing but a careful plan or a method to achieve a goal, and it's usually over a longish period of time, over a year, or maybe even over a 3 to 5 year time span. Japanese companies are set to plan strategy over decades. Okay, so it's a longish period of time. And in the case of a business, the conventional understanding of strategy is, why does a business exist? A business exists to achieve a sustainable competitive advantage in the marketplace. And a plan, or the way in which the business would like to go about its operations to achieve this sustainable competitive advantage through whatever means. We are going to achieve sustainable competitive advantage through the kind of service that nobody else provides. Okay, so that could be one way of understanding strategy. Or we are going to develop products that have a they are uniquely differentiated. Okay, so that would be one way of understanding strategy. Or if you have heard about GE, for instance, so GE had said, and Jack Welch had famously said at one point of time, that we will exit whatever businesses we are not number one or number two. So that's the strategy that they adopted, that we will be leaders. And if we are not leaders, we'll be working towards being number one or number two. And if we can't achieve it in a certain period of time, we will exit those businesses. Okay. So, and that was their main means of achieving sustainable competitive advantage. But the important thing to understand in this is the strategy of a business or the strategy of an organization always comes first, and strategy is top down. So the business first, and of course, it's a little difficult to perceive or to imagine right now from the position of a startup that you are in today. It's a little difficult to perceive being a corporate organization. So let's stick to a business level. So and many of you are wearing multiple hats. Keep that in mind. So you're also the business head, and you may also be the functional head. You may also be looking after the manufacturing aspect to develop the product. So what is first? What is first is the needs of the business and the strategy of the business. And then the functions, whether it is manufacturing, whether it is marketing, whether it is business development, or whatever other function, or HR or finance, the role of the function is to support the overall strategy of the business. That's very important to understand. And if the need of a business at a certain point in time is an anticipation of phenomenal demand coming up in the next 3 months or 6 months, owing to some environmental factors, and if it's normally impossible to ramp up manufacturing 20 times in 4 months, nevertheless, finding a way to ramp up manufacturing 20 times in 4 months, which will give our business a huge leg up in the marketplace, becomes manufacturing strategy and manufacturing objectives in order to support the needs of the business. Okay, so supporting the needs of the business strategy is what manufacturing strategy is all about. So this is the point at which I will welcome any questions you had right at the outset before we started this session, or any questions that you may have at this point before we move on to the next segment.
Ravi, while the questions come,
yeah,
can I just take you to the previous slide?
Of course.
Right. Yeah. So when we talk about corporate level, business level, and functional level, I just wanted to understand that a little bit more. So for example, a company like Reliance, okay. A business would be, say, petrochemicals or oil and gas, right?
Absolutely.
Is that you mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And functional, you mean like manufacturing or sales, something like that? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So now,
absolutely.
Yeah. So in a startup environment, of course, everything collapses to one, right? That is, it is going to be everything.
Yes, correct.
Yeah,
exactly.
All
exactly.
roles played by the founders, probably, right? But that said,
and that's why corporate is a little difficult to visualize. Yeah, at this point.
Yeah. So so this is one thing. The other thing, while the other questions are coming, I also wanted to understand, if we go back a little bit, I thought if we can run through a little bit of what the operations would look like in a typical industry. Okay, so for example, if you take titanium spinal implants, right? How would be what will be the various parts, and what will be the flow that will happen in a typical business of that kind? Like
Excellent.
starting right
sure,
from
sourcing
to end point of
user.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So usually when there is a manufacturing organization, you imagine the manufacturing organization to be at the center of a circle. And everything, all the movement of stuff is going to happen in and around this center. Okay, so if you can visualize that, put the manufacturing operation in the center and then have a concentric circle around it. Now you're going to have stuff flowing into this manufacturing organization. So what is that stuff? Okay, so let's presume that the manufacturing organization is already populated with the necessary infrastructure. So the machines and all that stuff is in place. Now you're going to have raw material flowing into this place.
Yeah.
You're going to have various types of consumables to support the manufacturing operation, which is going to be flowing into this place. You're going to have packaging material, which is flowing into this place. So you have all of this movement of raw material, of consumables, of tools, of oils, of lubricants, all of this flowing in this direction inward towards the manufacturing organization to enable the actual process of manufacturing, which is happening which is happening at the center. Now, once you have manufacturing where the conversion of these raw materials to finished products is happening, post-conversion, once again, you have an outward flow that's beginning.
Yeah.
Right. So you'll have an outward flow.
Yeah, maybe you can take an example like titanium spinal implants, just to so that it's clear.
So if you're looking at titanium spinal implants, now if you're a manufacturer, if you're an OEM, which is what I presume, then you have implants. You're also going to have instrumentation, and you may not be making your instrumentation yourself. You may have selected vendors to do it. So once again, you have your actual implants are getting physically made in the factory in your manufacturing, for which you have the raw material which has flowed in. That raw material is getting processed and converted, and it's moving through various machines and getting converted into finished implants. Then you may have 3, 4, 5 different suppliers for various instruments. And you have these instruments that are flowing in from supplier A, from supplier B, from supplier C, again flowing into your manufacturing, and they come into your incoming or into your receiving, where you have got inspection that is taking place, and then there's acceptance that takes place, and they move in your manufacturing organization. Maybe they go to your finished goods store where they are sitting, so that's the storage part of it. And you have implants which are getting manufactured, also coming into your finished goods store, and they are sitting there in the stores. So all of this is the inward movement.
Yeah.
And then you have a substantial outward movement, which also takes place, which is typically a one-to-many relationship, where you may have multiple distributors who are placing orders, or you may have multiple distributors and the hospitals which you supply directly who are also placing orders, and you have shipments that are flowing outwards. Order in, material accumulated, shipped out, flows to customer A, flows to customer B, flows to customer C, and so on. So that's how the supply chain looks like. You have multiple arms which have multiple things flowing into the manufacturing organization, and then you have multiple things flowing out to various destinations. So that's what a typical supply chain is likely to be.
So, Ravi, are you going to talk about choosing between different manufacturing options, CROs,
yes.
Yeah, because there's some questions coming on that. I thought, should we park it for later? For example, your views on data management and confidentiality from CROs, how to choose between components, parts from a vendor, and assembling yourself against handing over complete
That is coming up. That is coming up.
Yeah. And evaluating vendors based on different parameters, quality, delivery, cost, productivity, all that. I suppose you're going to speak about that, right?
That is coming up, not in so much, but I will cover it in more detail than I had planned. Okay.
Okay. And would you say another question is about, if of a product, if you're manufacturing a part, would you still call it an OEM, or is it?
Okay. So if you're making only a part, then it appears that you are probably a vendor. What is not clear from your question is whether you are making a part and you're getting other parts from other suppliers, but who owns the product? and who is placing the product on the market? That is not clear from your question. So
Yeah.
the answer is there are two possibilities. If you are placing the end product on the market under your own name and under your own brand, then you are the OEM. If you are supplying a part to somebody who is then putting it, using that part in his final product, and that organization is placing the final end product on the market, that company is the OEM.
Yeah. So for example, in a car, the car manufacturer and seller, say Mahindra's, is an OEM, right?
Absolutely.
The guy who makes the, say, the window wipers is a vendor.
He's a vendor.
Yeah, but the guy who makes a sound system for it might be an OEM also, right? Who you're buying as an accessory.
Absolutely.
Right. So I don't know if that.
But in this particular instance,
yeah.
So for example, if you are looking at these music system companies, or looking at Bose.
Yeah.
Now, Bose is an OEM in their own right.
Yeah.
But if Bose is making an audio system for my car, for my Mahindra car, and I am Mahindra and Mahindra,
yeah,
and that's a system that is designed for my vehicle, well, jointly by my design team and the Bose design team.
Yeah.
And I have finalized the specifications and given it to Bose and say, I want you to make this in this quantity and supply me every month.
Mhm.
Then in that context, Bose is still a vendor.
Yeah.
He is not an OEM in this context. In this context, Bose is a vendor.
Yeah. And how, for example, does an Intel chip look like? It's a chip which is in a computer, right? So there's a laptop, let's say. So the laptop is the OEM, and
absolutely.
But Intel is branding itself as well, right?
So these are certain cases, these are certain exceptions, and there are two. There's one more exception which I will share on this.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain technologies where where a supplier or a vendor of a specific technology makes a choice to go to the end market and publicize themselves in order to, and that's part of their strategy. Okay. And the strategy is to achieve differentiation and recognition in the mind of the end customer. It's very rare, mind you. It's very rare. And the other instance I will give you of this type is ceramic products, especially in orthopedics. So in orthopedics, you have ceramic ball heads, which are used in joint replacement. It's a tiny component of a hip replacement. So in a hip replacement, you'll have a femoral implant, you'll have an acetabular implant, which is all the bulk of it. And then you will have a small ceramic ball of maybe 22 millimeters or 28 millimeters, a very small ceramic ball, which sits on top of the femoral head and articulates with the acetabular side. Now, a company that is making only the ceramic ball is a vendor to the OEM, to the orthopedic OEM, which is making the end product, which is a total hip replacement implant. However, the way Intel has done and the way AMD has done in the field of chips, Ceramtech has done exactly this in the field of orthopedics. And what Ceramtech has done is gone to orthopedic conferences and meetings, and they are present at the exhibition. They do a lot of research work. They investigate failures. They publish papers in journals. They go and present. They have a scientific team which presents in conferences. And so they have brought themselves, even though they are a vendor, they have pushed themselves into the forefront, into the mind of the customer. Now, one of the reasons why developers of certain technologies will adopt a strategy like this is to make themselves the most preferred supplier or the most preferred vendor to the entire industry. That's what Intel is trying to do. If you make a laptop, you better choose Intel. Why? Because a customer is going to feel they are influencing the end market. They are influencing the end market to put pressure on the OEM. Okay, that you choose. And that's why the promotional campaign, Intel Inside. That you will feel comfortable, you will feel confident. So this is very rare. It means the nature of your technology is sort of significantly influences in the customer's mind the way the product is going to perform. And if you have that kind of a strong influence in what the product will deliver as performance, then it makes sense to think of a strategy like this.
Yeah. So Ravi, there are questions on how to go about scaling manufacturing, when to do
Scaling
it.
is coming up.
Yeah, and also choices, right, between when to do it in-house versus outside and
That's
so on.
coming up as
So I
well.
think I'll let you continue, and then we can come back to these questions a little later. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of these questions will probably come back to at the end of the next segment. Because these questions are a little bit more detailed than what I had taken as a scope. So it's best to answer them as questions.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So next we'll look at the implications of investing in manufacturing, and we'll also look at options. What are the options available? And typically the options, I'm going to look at this from the perspective of a startup organization. And the last part, we'll look at OEM responsibility, but that's for later. Okay, so this is the point at which we'll do a quick poll. Okay, and the poll question or the poll statement to which you have to agree yes or no is, the statement is, we should invest in our own manufacturing infrastructure, and your response required is just a yes or a no. There's a link that has been posted on the chat box for all participants. So request you to please click on the link, and you will have a window which allows you to select a yes or a no as an answer. So let's just have
this is for your own company, right? For their own company, what they believe.
Yeah, what is your belief?
Yeah.
or maybe this is your belief. This is just to test your belief. It may not be with respect to your own company, but do you believe that we must invest or we should invest in our own manufacturing infrastructure? Yes or no? So we'll take a minute to have the responses.
I think you may need to, yeah, Anmol has gone into screen share. Yeah, okay, good. Yeah.
Oh, great. Is it 50-50? Okay, well, it's constantly changing.
It's still climbing, hang on.
Yeah. We're very balanced. We have a nice, very balanced participant group.
Yeah, we have about 20 responses so far, and they're about 50 and 50.
And we are exactly 50. Okay. Okay. 45, 55. 43, 57. Okay. 42, 58. The no's are winning now.
Okay, probably we're probably almost there. So
yeah, okay.
Yeah,
60,
anybody
40.
wants to give their inputs, do it now. Okay, so many of them want to outsource probably. Let's see.
We have 60% who believe we should not necessarily invest in our own manufacturing. We have 42%, very significant number, who believe we should invest in our own manufacturing infrastructure. Okay, wonderful. Do we have maximum responses? Should we move on or wait a bit?
No, I think we should move on. I hope others can.
Yeah, that is a good comment. Do you think able to see the results while voting could add to bias? Yeah, certainly. That's a good point. Thanks. Maybe we should hold on to showing that till all the results are in. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on. Do I have control of the screen again?
Yeah, I think you should try sharing now.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, very good. So after that poll, I'm sorry, there's one more which is immediately following, but it's along the same lines. Okay, and this is also.
Yeah, we can't see your screen yet, huh? You have
okay.
to share your screen.
Do I need to reshare? Okay.
Yeah, you need to share your screen. Yeah.
Looks like I have to reshare. Okay. My Zoom window is not able to get my Zoom window going. Hold on.
Just try moving your mouse to the bottom. You'll see, or
Okay, there's
escape out of the
somewhere-
full screen.
Yeah, I've done that.
Escape out of full screen, and then you should see a Zoom window.
I'm out of the full screen now. But my Zoom window is not visible. Okay. Oh. Oh yeah, got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's coming. Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay. Close the chat box. Okay, startup. So we have about, I think we ended up with something like 45%, 55% in 55% in favor of having your own manufacturing, or the other way around, 45% in favor of having your own manufacturing. Now, your own manufacturing is one of the key imperatives, and let me just rephrase that. I didn't mean your own manufacturing, but setting up manufacturing is one of the key imperatives or key things a startup needs to look at just before commercialization. But that's not the only one, obviously. There are others too. And what I would like at this point is, again, a small poll for your opinions. Now, this is descriptive and a quick exercise to understand your thoughts on what would be the top priorities. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So 1 to 3 is just so that we get a quick response from you. What would be your thoughts on the top few priorities in the immediate pre-commercialization phase for a startup or for you as a startup? So you can answer this from your own perspective, that just before I get into commercialization, what are the most important things I need to look at? That's the exercise. And once again, you will see a link in the chat box. And if you click on that link, then you will go to a window which allows you to type in your responses, and I think allows you a maximum of about 300 characters or so. And that is the link which ends with RYE. That's the link shared by Mugdalele. So all participants, requesting you to click on this link.
Yeah, so I think they are asking
to elaborate on the question. Yeah. So just before you commercialize, so what does this mean? If you are going to enter the market, that's what I mean by saying commercialize. By pre-commercialization phase, I mean let's say the 3 to 4 months before you actually launch a product in the market. Before you launch, so I suppose that is obvious, right? Before you actually go into the market to start sales. That is what it means by launch. And you have the immediate preceding period, let's say 3 to 6 months, where you're going to be preparing for this event of launching your product in the market. So let's say 3 to 6 months before your actual product launch. What are the most important priorities that you will have, in your opinion, as an organization? What are the most important things that you need to look at, or the most important things that you need to do or to achieve in this period? And they can be in the form of bullet points. Okay, 2, 3, 4, whatever you have in your mind. That's the expected response. I hope that is clearer. Sandeep Raut, I hope my explanation helped you.
Yeah, maybe, I mean, one example on these lines so that we can connect.
Yeah, I think let me give it a shot so that Ravi doesn't give away his answers. Right?
Thanks. Yeah. Appreciate
so you can imagine that before you're launching, you probably want to figure out all your distributors. You want to figure out all your supply chain. You want to make sure that once you start getting orders, you're able to deliver. All of those kind of issues, right? So there'll be a bunch of things you need to plan for before you decide that here, I'm ready to sell, right? What are those?
Yeah, thanks. Clarifications can be so tricky.
Anmol, are you putting up the results? Maybe you can unshare for a moment, Ravi. Just unshare.
Okay.
So yeah. Okay, there we go. These are some of the results coming up. Quality, reliability, capacity of production, market size, pre-order interest, fund in account.
Yeah. Okay. Channels. Okay. Yeah. Distribution strategy, marketing strategy.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Getting product ready, getting supply and ready, getting user preference. Good.
And Molly could go back to the top probably. I think a lot of ground covered, Ravi, a lot of different points. Now maybe you can tell us what you prioritize ahead.
Absolutely, 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 absolutely. So there's a preponderance of thinking, and that's the point which I actually wanted to bring out. Most of us, when we are thinking at this point of time, and these responses are very natural responses, that a lot of our thinking is focused on product fulfillment, which is how am I going to supply? How am I going to organize myself to supply? Give me a moment. I'll have to share my screen again, I think. Yes, is it visible now?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So a lot of our thinking is focused on fulfillment. But the most important, and this is what I believe we need to start looking at a little bit more, is we have to build the team. Okay. When you are getting into actually launching product in the market, it's very important to be able to sustain that effort. And that's not going to happen without building the team, especially in key areas which we'll speak about. I believe a market survey, and I will explain what kind of a survey, is very crucial. A marketing plan, a sales and distribution plan, and an operations plan, and of course, supply chain and test launch. Now, a good number of responses focused on having channels, looking at operations, looking at manufacturing, looking at vendors, and so on. But when you look at building the team, you need to look at 5 crucial functions. And you need to have these functions populated well. You must have your marketing in place. You must have sales, your sales organization, maybe a skeleton sales organization. It must be in place. Your supply chain is not going to manage itself, and you're going to need somebody to look after all of this massive amount of movement of parts and products and all of that going to and fro. So you need to have the beginnings of your supply chain organization in place. All of this has to be administered, and the finance aspect and the starting from something as mundane as invoicing and accounts has to be taken care of. And of course, operations, which involves everything from sourcing and getting parts from vendors and your manufacturing operation itself, and everything that goes along. So these functions must be populated, or at least the beginnings of populating this function have to be taken care of right at the outset. And this has to happen 3 to 6 months before you launch. That is the first aspect, building the team. Secondly, a lot of what you will be able to do in the marketplace, okay, is going to revolve around what you can sell and what those numbers are going to be. And this is the point, 3 to 6 months before you launch, when your proof of concept is done, your product is done, your prototyping is done, you know what your product is going to be, you have done a little bit of test marketing, you have done a little bit of customer feedback, some validations have happened, and you know that there is some traction in the market for your item. Now, from this point onwards, and as we will see going forward, whether it means planning your manufacturing capacity, or whether it means telling your vendors how many parts you need, or whether it means, what is the build that you're going to make for your launch, whether you're going to make 100 pieces, 1,000 pieces, or 100,000 pieces, and what kind of capacity you're going to create, whether you're going to create a capacity to manufacture 200 a month, 2,000 a month, or 20,000 a month. All of this depends upon your sales plan. What are you going to sell? What are you going to sell on day one? And what is your sustainable sales going to be? And all of this depends upon a few things. It depends upon a real market size for the product which you are proposing to put on the market. It depends on a number of other things. You may have a certain perception about the value your product is offering. You may have a certain perception about how well differentiated it is. But whether this is truly the way it is perceived by the vast majority of customers, okay, this is an unknown. And these are the kind of answers. How well is your value proposition going to be received? How well is your competitive advantage going to be perceived by the potential customer? Or what kind of marketing or branding or promotional effort will be needed in order to make this differentiation apparent to a customer to provide you with the competitive advantage? I mean, sometimes it's obvious and sometimes it may not be. So a lot of these answers need to be found, and they need to be found with a market survey. Okay, is every segment of the market going to receive your product in the same manner? Usually doesn't happen. Markets are usually segmented. So what do I mean by segmented? So you have different types of customers. You have customers who prefer premium products. You have customers who prefer lower value products, or what is called value for money products. And you have customers with different applications. So which types of customers are more likely to respond favorably to your offering? It's very important to know this, because this results in how efficiently your sales organization or your channels can create revenue in the fastest possible way. And that is what would lead you to a customer targeting plan. Which are the customers we go after first? Which are the so-called, it's called low-hanging fruit. Which are the low-hanging fruit where we are going to get results quickly? And these answers are very important if you have to maximize the probability of achieving your goals in the first 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year from the date you put your product on the market. And getting good quality answers by means of a good quality market survey, which has primary data as its base, is extremely crucial in this run-up to commercialization. As I said, whether you have to put a promotional plan in place, whether you have to put a brand development plan in place. So what is a promotional plan? So promotion may involve promotional activities. Okay, it all depends upon who is your customer, whether you're going into the mass retail market, which is not the case with high technology products. You're typically looking at niche customers. So I know that in our cohort, we have somebody who is looking at spine implants, we have somebody looking at maxillofacial implants, we have somebody looking at energy storage devices, somebody with a sleep apnea plate. These are all very specialized products with very targeted, a very small and well-defined customer universe. But this customer universe is already being bombarded with a lot of messaging from your existing competitors who are already in the marketplace. And quite frankly, you must see this, if you see this from their perspective, for them, life is gone on pretty well without you coming along, right? So when you have come along, how are you going to get yourself noticed? So you have a strong message, you may have a very strong value proposition, you may have a strong advantage that you are giving to them, provided they know about it, right? They have to get the message. How are they going to get that message? What is the kind of activity that you are going to create around your product, around your technology, involving certain subsets of customers? Which are the customers you are going to involve in sort of spreading your message? Are those customers going to help in spreading your message to the rest of the community? All of these, answering all of these questions, is the result of answering these questions will be a promotional plan. And of course, keep in mind that on day one, when you launch, you are an unknown brand, okay, competing with companies who are established in the minds of your customers for varying lengths of time. And what would you need to do to establish your name in their head, to make them think of you? And that's where brand development would come in, okay? And creating these, or at least beginning to think of these, is very crucial in the run-up to commercialization. Sales and distribution. Are you going to start attempting to sell all over India? Are you going to start attempting to sell all over Asia and the Asia Pacific region? Or within India, are you going to focus on the Western region first? If not West, are you going to focus on West and South first? Or are you going to focus only in Pune city? Okay. So all of this is a result of what your market survey tells you in terms of relative market size by regions, in terms of certain customer behaviors which may surface when a good quality survey is done, in terms of maybe the kind of competition that is present, which may be regionally skewed. Okay. So competition may not be present in East India for whatever reason, or it may be low. So there may be various factors which can influence how you choose which territories to go after first. Again, keeping in mind the fact that you want to immediately kickstart revenue generation. Okay. So that is what will result in a territory prioritization plan. What do I go after? Keep in mind, all of these things that I am sharing with you have a single solitary focus. And that focus is to minimize your risk of not achieving what you want to achieve in terms of revenue. Because at the end of the day, that is the goal when you commercialize. The goal when you commercialize is to go into the market and generate cash for the business. And that's what everybody is looking at. That's what you are looking at. Okay. So which territories do you prioritize? And then the channel that you are going to require, those efforts are going to be obviously aligned to the kind of territory prioritization that your plan is telling you, and obviously the headcount that you need in order to support that effort, and how are you going to monitor all this, okay, and who's going to do it. So this becomes the sales and distribution plan, very important in the run-up to commercialization. Coming to operations, we spoke about capacity, right? So what capacity are you going to plan for? So if your market survey is done well, if you know the size of your market, if you know which are the territories and which are the regions, how is the consumption distributed regionally? How is competition distributed regionally? And what kind of share you believe you can target? Once you start absorbing these numbers, it's possible to arrive at a certain number of, in terms of, let's say, I'm sure we can aim for a 3% market share in the first year. And that translates into, say, 50 crores or 80 crores or 150 crores or maybe 1,000 crores, depending on the market size. Okay. And that gives you a much more confident handle on what kind of capacity you need to plan for. Okay. Second, you have a channel plan. You know what is the territory, you know what is how your customers are distributed in the territory, and you know what kind of channel would be required, how many dealers, how many distributors would we have to put in place to service this market or to service this territory that we are targeting. What kind of inventory each distributor or dealer will have to carry, okay, and how many of them will be a point. All of this will enable you to firm up what kind of inventory you need to build for launch. Okay, how are you going to manage that inventory? Okay, are you going to, what is the kind of level that you're going to maintain of finished products? what is the kind of level you're going to maintain of sub-assemblies? What are the supply commitments you have from vendors in terms of delivery and lead time? Okay, all of these have to be put in place, to and all of this at the end of the day depends on two numbers. It depends upon what you think you can sell in terms of quantities with a reasonable level of confidence based on fairly well ascertained numbers. And of course, the headcount and the people required to make all this happen. Supply chain, very obvious, because without this is something that would be happening. And I said 3 to 6 months, but probably at the 6 to 8 month mark is when the supply chain things would need to start being tied up, about 8 months before launch. Are all the sources in place? Are all the vendors in place? Have we finished our supplier agreements with all of them? Does everybody know what they have to do? Are all specifications shared? Are all quality requirements aligned? Okay, then what about my warehousing? What about logistics? How are products going to move from point A to point B? All of this actually has to be tied in much, much earlier. So maybe somewhere 6 months, 8 months, 9 months before launch. One of the recommendations that I have for any startup, irrespective of how strong your product idea may be or how strong your value proposition is to do a test launch. So you pick a small territory. So this entire event that we spoke about as a launch, make it into a test launch in a small territory. And a test launch is a sort of, it's like a pilot. And I think one of our respondents actually spoke about test launch, and that was nice. I was happy to see that, where you have to test and validate your assumptions. So one of your assumptions may be that if we go and demonstrate this technology to a customer, he's definitely going to go for it. This may be one of your assumptions because our value proposition is very strong. Now, when you do a test launch in, say, a particular city, and you put in maybe you as the founder and with a very small team of 2 salespeople and 1 channel partner, when you go and do this test launch and you actually measure what happens out of every 10 demonstrations we do, how many orders do we close? And that will give you your sales conversion rate. Okay, and knowing what that sales conversion rate is at your level and what is achievable is going to be very crucial when you start developing the metrics for sales targeting as you make a more widespread launch. So you don't create unrealistic expectations, where I am putting in a sales team or I am putting in so many distributors into the market. And as a result, these distributors, each of them should sell X number. And I have 25 of them in the market, so 25X per month. And that is the revenue. And you start projecting those revenues and without knowing whether that X is a real number or not. Okay, so doing a test launch is of great value. It doesn't have to be for a long period of time. A test launch is something that's going to happen in a very short period of time, maybe somewhere between 1 to 3 months, but enough for you to understand and validate whether the assumptions that you are making about how well your product will be received in the market and how strongly the value proposition will be accepted by your customers against competitive pressures that you have. That is going to be very crucial, and it's a strong action that I recommend. So the biggest priorities, pre-commercialization phase, build the team, survey the market, develop your marketing, sales and distribution plan. Operations, supply chain actually should happen before all of this, maybe at the 6 to 8 month time point. And when you're launching, think of a pilot, think of a small pilot for a short time frame, 1 to 3 months. Collect feedback, understand what conversion rates are happening, and develop realistic numbers. Modify your plans as you go in for a full launch.
Yep. Would you think that it'll be worth seeing that sheet again of responses from people?
Oh yeah, good idea. Yeah.
Anmol, can you put that up?
Yes.
Can you unshare for a moment?
Yes, I have done that.
No, I think you have just, yeah. Now you unshare.
Quality, reliability, capacity. Yeah, here is the test pilots completed. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we had market analysis roadmap. Good. Product validation, regulation, market ready product. vendor development, trial build from contract manufacturing, material procurement, certifications and approvals. How is my product compared to competitors? Does it have good market pull? Yes, that is one of the key questions which a survey has to answer. Scope of funding, partners, identified market segment, niche, very good. That is again something that should come from a survey. Distribution strategy, marketing strategy, manufacturing and storage strategy, yes. Customer relationship management in place, along with complete supply chain management system, working with all contingencies being addressed. Yes, that's where you need to reach. Good.
So I think we were in the right space then, Ravi.
Yeah, absolutely.
Responses are roughly there.
Yes, they're roughly there.
I've heard, for example, that many of the FMCG companies use, defense CSD canteens as their test launch bed.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think they do that? Like that test launch bed?
Very, 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 very interesting. One of the things is it is a captive, defense CSD canteen is like a captive market.
Yeah.
Because of the huge subsidy that is offered in a CSD canteen,
mm-hmm.
Your product movement is assured. So I don't know whether they do it so much as a test launch,
mm-hmm.
but they do it much more from the perspective of, having an assured volume.
So is the test launch more to see if all the things are working in synchronous mode and without any gaps, or is it more to check the market pull and the pricing point and all of that?
Everything. Everything. Okay. Starting from I would actually say testing the assumptions and solidifying the assumptions on how many customers can be acquired in X period of time. It starts from that.
Mm-hmm.
If we contact 10, how many will we end up as customers? Is it going to be 1? Is it going to be 2? Is it going to be 5? And usually conversion is less than 10%. Usually. Unless the technology is very, very strong and the differentiation is extremely strong, or the product is so unique and fulfills a need which nobody fulfills, which is very difficult to imagine in this day and age. So usually conversions hover between, I would say, a little less than 1 to a little more than 1 out of 10.
Yeah.
But it's important to establish that we at least get this, somewhere between 1, 2, 3 out of 10, so that you are in the ballpark. Second is if there's installation involved. How well does this installation take place? If we have trained our channel partner to do the installation, then you have to set up a process there to call the customer and get feedback. Did everything go to your satisfaction, or what did not happen? So basically, you test out everything that needs to happen. It's like a lab. You do everything in a small laboratory at lab scale to make sure it's working before, you don't want to multiply your problems and end up with issues from 20 different states, all of a sudden sitting on top of your head.
Yeah.
So you find out what is happening at a small scale, which is all very manageable within a team of, say, 4 to 6 people. You manage all of this and you tie up, you modify your processes if needed, and you implement your learnings before you go into the full market. Yeah. That's really the idea of this.
Can you go back to your slides again? Yeah. In the meantime, let me also ask you this question, which is, in startup mode, what typically happens is that people don't have the resources to do all of these things, right? But they will have to do it in some skeleton mode. So one other strategy is to do it at a small scale, enough to raise more money. Right?
Absolutely.
So it's driven by
absolutely.
Yeah. But with the goal to raise more money, so Correct. That you can do the rest of it, right? So it's absolutely. Every time you're building upon raising more money, just showing enough results. So you have to just prove as many claims as possible to raise more money.
Absolutely. So the way you do a proof of concept, this will be a proof of what sales we can achieve. It becomes a proof of revenue. Is something that can come from a test launch. In this particular territory, with this kind of market size and this kind of competition, in 3 months, this was our customer acquisition. And that becomes a very strong metric which can give confidence to investors for you to do a full scale up.
Yep. Okay, great. Let's continue, please.
Yeah. Okay. Now, as we have seen, at launch and at commercialization, and the first 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, as you are trying to establish yourself in the marketplace, if you are commercializing your technology or your product, your business requires substantial expenditures for revenue generation, which is basically, what is revenue generation? Just a fancy way to describe, yaar dhanda leke aana hai. Okay, you have to go out there and sell, and your people and your team have to go out there, acquire customers, sell, and convert interest into cash. This is the biggest priority for the business, to keep your head above the water and make yourself a commercial success. And this has to happen in the first 6 to 18 months. And of course, what goes along with it is slowly market share starts building up and customers start knowing more about the product, and the certain amount of momentum will build up from that point onwards. But the biggest requirement of the business is revenue. Biggest requirement of the business is generating sales, revenue, and cash. And also, this phase has the highest uncertainty. And as they say, you know, I'm sure many of you have heard this saying, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. And they say this about, it's a very old, maybe it is Sun Tzu or one of those, you know, wonderful phrases or statements. No plan survives first contact with the enemy. So you may make all kinds of plans that we will take the high ridge and we will fire down on them from the top, and you make all those plans. And at your army goes in, at first contact with the enemy, your plan is all shot to hell, and everything that you thought will work doesn't work. And this is like Murphy's law. Okay, that's the way life works. You make all kinds of plans, but when you actually get out there and start implementing, it's not going to happen the way you exactly thought it would. And this is supposed to be the agony, and solving all of this is supposed to be the ecstasy of being in a startup and facing all these challenges and solving them. Okay, that's what life is going to be about. But what you have to deal with is the highest levels of uncertainty when you're trying to establish your product and your business and your brand. Now, in this context, this is the context that we need to keep in mind when we start looking at what it means to make investments in manufacturing. So first, when you start looking at manufacturing itself, you must deal with the fact that there is a very, very wide variety of technologies and processes and equipment that come into play. If you're looking at products that involve metals, okay, you would have a host of processes and equipments. You may have net shape processes like casting or forging to create a particular shape or form of a product. Then you have machining, and then you have finishing, each of which are independent processes with independent equipment in their own right. You have specialized processes which are required to provide a part with certain physical qualities. Maybe they have to be very hard, or they have to be very tough, or maybe they have to withstand, they have to have certain mechanical properties. So you may have to do heat treatment, which is again specialized equipment by itself. You may have products which have specific geometries or forms, which may have to be created by specialized processes like drawing or rolling. Your parts may have sheet metal components, okay, thin sheets, 1 mm, 1.2 mm, 0.8 mm sheets, but made from these sheets, which have a host of other specialized processes and equipment involved, like rolling, stamping, bending, punching, deep drawing. Each of these has equipment of its own to carry out such operations. And then your product may involve, your components may have to be coated depending on what function they are fulfilling. So then you have physical vapor deposition, chemical vapor deposition, plasma coating, thermal spray, and a host of other technologies. And all of this is pertaining to just metals. Your product may involve plastics. It may have a casing. So most of the handheld devices that we are looking at would have some kind of casing, and those casings are typically going to be injection molded, okay, or they may be blow molded, or they may be compression molded, and the molding may not be the final process. It may require some machining subsequent to the molding. your product may involve electronics. And I'm not even talking about semiconductor manufacturing, which is a total niche area by itself. But at least you would involve fabricating PCBs and assembling them. Okay. And doing this at volumes and scale requires a lot of customized special purpose equipment. You may be doing something that is chemistry based, and you would need to have reactors, pressure vessels, and all of these, which exponentially increase in cost and size based on the volumes you're dealing with. There may be specific technologies like batteries or energy storage devices, where entire plants, manufacturing plants, are customized with processes to deliver such products. Testing and inspection, depending on the technology that you're dealing with, would have all kinds of specialized equipment. Okay. Now, when you look at this wide variety, there's only one thing that's really common amongst all of these, is they're all very, very, very capital intensive. Okay? That's the factor that you have to keep in mind. And the other thing you need to keep in mind is manufacturing processes and equipment can dramatically vary with scale and volumes. So what does this mean? So let's take an example. Now let's take the example once again of our spine implant company, right? So for our spine implant, to make a spine implant, let's say a spine screw, if your volumes are going to be 500 pieces a month, you're going to select a certain process and a certain sequence of processes. So you may turn that part to create a blank in machine A or operation A. Then you may move the blank to operation B on a second machine and do the threading on one side. And then subsequent to that, you may move the blank from machine B to machine C and do the threading on the other side. Okay, and that way you may split your operation between 3 or 4 different machines, all of which each of these machines may cost you in the region of 15 to 25 lakhs. Okay, and so with a 1 crore investment, you may create a volume of production capacity of anywhere between 500 to 1500 pieces a month. But say your production capacity that you're looking for is say 30,000 pieces a month. Then all of a sudden, the duplication of these machines would become so many that it may become unsustainable. And you may be able to look at a radically different method of actually doing all the machining operations in a single machine, in which case you may get a horizontal machining center, which is costing, say, 2 crores. But that horizontal machining center may have a cycle time of just maybe 3.5 minutes to produce your entire screw. And so you may produce something like 800 screws per shift, right? Which is almost 24,000 odd screws a month, which may be possible by just one single machine. But would you opt for this one? And this is going to be the most efficient, and your cost per piece is going to be the lowest because your cycle time is the lowest, right? Material in, screw out, the ultimate dream of manufacturing, highly efficient, highly productive. But if you implement this 2 crore technology and make this 2 crore investment on day one, and the actual volumes and consumption of your product is 500 pieces, and you're sitting on a capacity of 24,000 pieces a month, where does this leave your costing, right? So it's just not going to be workable. And this is the kind of dramatic variation that happens as scale and volumes grow. And this is universally true. I gave you an example about machining, but this is universally true. There are some cases where you probably have to go in for very high scale and volume, where your plants are specialized, your equipment is very, very specialized, and there's no other way to do it. Okay, it doesn't happen all the time, but there are some cases where that is the only option, where you either go in to big scale or you don't go in at all. But most of the time, there is a big variation as your volumes go up. And this is also what it means. As volumes go up and the capacity utilization of a high-end technology is high, your cost per piece really comes down. Let's take a couple of small examples. So here is an example of a defibrillator. This is just to give a sense of how many different manufacturing technologies are involved. So if you look at a typical defibrillator, it has a lithium-ion rechargeable battery, and batteries require specialized manufacturing plants, and we will see what it means in the next slide. You will require a casing, you will require an electrode housing, which are plastic parts, typically injection molded. So
Hello, did we lose Ravi?
Yeah, his audio seems to have gone.
Okay. Let's just give
okay,
him.
okay, yeah.
Sorry,
I don't
we
know,
lost
it
you.
just went into.
Yeah,
At,
we lost you when you were talking about casings for the defibrillator.
Okay, perfect. I'm almost there. Yeah. So casings, electrode housings, these parts need to be injection molded. So you need an injection molding machine and of course the tooling to support it. Electrodes are typically tin sheets, so they are continuous cast, and that's a specific equipment by itself to do that casting. And those electrodes are then coated, so you have coating equipment involved. The cable wires are high precision wires on diameter, extremely precise, and they have to be wire drawn. And that's another specialized equipment. The insulation is coated onto the wire, and you can't really, make the wire in one place and then send the wire to a second place to get them insulated. So probably need the insulation equipment as a continuous process, which is close to the wire drawing machine. And then this has to be assembled. And if the volumes are large, it may be automated. And then you have a final assembly line. So at least so many different technologies in a product like a defibrillator, and anything that involves anything in the nature of equipment. You would typically have a casing, you would typically have a PCB, you would typically have some functional parts. You are going to have a minimum of 4 to 6 different manufacturing technologies involved if you have to think of making it. What kind of investments are we typically looking at? So from a machining perspective, if you look at a CNC machining center, depending on the size, the capacity, and the level of precision, and certain features like the number of axes that the machine has, which means how many different directions it can hold your part and create your geometry. Depending on all these factors, your investment can go anywhere from 25 lakhs to 5 crores for a single machine. A stamping press, if you want to make sheet metal parts, is going to be anywhere between 15 lakhs to 1.5 crores. Injection molding machines, again, depending on what the platen size and the capacity and how big is the size that you want to make and so on, can go anywhere from 8 lakhs to 3 crores. A forging press to create a general net shape or a geometry for a metallic component, whether it's mechanical, hydraulic, or whatever, can be anywhere between 25 lakhs to 3 crores. Physical vapor deposition, chemical vapor deposition, you're looking at 3 crores upwards. Additive manufacturing is very popular. Everybody likes to speak about it. It's very fashionable also. A standard laser sintering machine would start at 3 crores and go upwards as you're looking at, productivity and capacity and so on. For your packaging operation, you need validatable sealing machines if you are looking at a medical product. And especially if you're going to have sterile packaging. And these sealing machines, depending on capacity, would start at 6 lakhs and go up to 20 lakhs. Specialized inspection equipment, like a 3-dimensional coordinate measuring machine, would start at about 35 lakhs and go up to 1 crore. And all of this is for a single unit, okay? A single unit, a single machine, a single piece of measuring equipment. These are the kind of investments you're looking at. And like one of my old bosses used to like to say, the thing about investing in manufacturing capacity, the biggest problem is you cannot buy half a machine. Okay, and you will understand what I mean by this statement as we move ahead. Couple of other examples, okay, and we spoke about specialized plants. So if you're looking at energy storage devices or batteries or lithium-ion batteries, these are continuous processes with very specific plants, and there are companies which design and manufacture these plants, and you can look at the host of specialized equipment which end up as a production line to actually create that simple, tiny lithium-ion battery that you saw in the previous slide. You start with mixing, coating, calendaring, slitting, making the electrode, winding, forming, heat sealing, and so on and so on. And all of this equipment, one after the other, required. And this is massive in terms of investment. So companies which are, creating these plants and supplying to you based on what your product is, you would end up investing anywhere between 50 to 100 crores on a plant of this type. Looking at implantable devices, okay, so our maxillofacial startup, our spine implant startup, at a minimum, you're going to need precision machining, okay, because the demands on precision and finish of your devices are going to be beyond what conventional engineering industry is familiar with. You will not find these machines in India. You will of necessity have to import these machines, either Japanese machines or German machines, okay, very, very high end. You're going to need excellent finishing equipment and technologies, automated. At a minimum, you will need titanium anodizing, which is a 30 to 40 lakh investment and a lot of know-how. You'll need a cleaning and passivation line, okay, and you need very high-end measuring equipment like a CMM, and you need to have a QC lab. And the capital investment you're looking at to set up a certain bare minimum, certain reasonable capacity to make all of this business worthwhile is going to be a capital investment in the region of 5 to 8 crores to get things going. So this brings us to our next pole, which is a very typical issue which will happen if you are thinking of investing in manufacturing. And that's called the capacity balancing problem. So let's look at this. I've framed this as a very simple numerical problem. Let's say your product requires 3 operations. Very simple. Operation 1, operation 2, operation 3 to be carried out on the material. On the raw material, operation 1 is carried out. Then it goes to machine B, where operation 2 is carried out. It then goes to machine 3, where operation 3 is carried out. And let's say at the end of these 3 simple operations, you have a finished product that comes out of the other end ready for sale. Not a realistic situation, but is just a hypothetical example. And let's say machine A has a capacity of 1,000 pieces per month. So from machine A, it can process 1,000 pieces every month. Machine B can process 500 pieces per month for operation 2. And machine C can process 250 pieces per month for operation 3. Right? Your initial sales forecast has shown you a monthly demand of 400 pieces per month. And keep in mind that a new machine delivery lead time is 5 to 6 months. You have already made the decision to invest in a manufacturing setup. Okay, for whatever reasons, that's your decision, and you have gone ahead to make this decision to invest. On day 1, to set up your manufacturing, how many of each machine will you invest in? That is the question. So as usual, there's a link in the chat box. And there is, thank you, Mugdha, for the link. There is the link. It's a descriptive option there. So you can actually type out your answer as, so many of machine A, so many of B, so many of C, or whatever. So I will just stop sharing my screen at this point.
We'll need to keep your slide on so that people remember what they are.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Right.
Yeah. It's a little more involved question. So
yeah,
they will
absolutely.
need the reference.
right. Yeah, it's back on. So take a minute or two, because it's not as simple as it looks. It's not just numerical. You'll have to think about implications of your decision.
So what you're expecting is how many of A, how many of B, how many of C on day 1, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, maybe now we can go to how many are coming up, Anmol, online? If it's crossing 15, you should go.
Yeah, we have around 9 right now.
Okay, so let's wait till 15. Okay, your responses, please go ahead. How are we
Shall I
doing,
stop?
Anmol? Yeah,
Shall I
yeah.
stop
I
sharing
think you
now?
can share. Yeah, you can stop sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Anmol can actually take control from his end, I think. I'll stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. 112, fine. Outsource, okay. C2 numbers B1 outsource A, okay. Okay, cater with the existing setup, okay. Okay. 2x machine C, okay. That's the numerical answer. Okay. Okay, okay. A for higher demand in 5 to 6 months.
Maybe as a next exercise, Ravi, you should put down a cost for each of those also.
Right. Okay. So I'll now, how do I go back and share? Yeah. Okay. Share. So let me now explain a little bit more about the implications. Okay. So the numerical part of this is pretty straightforward, right? So if A produces 1,000 pieces a month, but your demand is 400, so you obviously have excess capacity in A, and like I said earlier, you can't buy half a machine. But that's the option. Okay, you have one of A. B is 500 and your demand is 400, and you are in a good place, no problem. C is 250, so you're going to need two. Now with B, you have a capacity of 500, and you bought two machines of C, and also you made the capacity 500, and your demand is 400, and you're in a good place. But I deliberately twisted things by telling you the new machine delivery lead time is 5 to 6 months. Okay, so what does this mean? It means that if your market picked up very well in the first 3 to 4 months, and you started getting orders of 550, 600, 650 pieces per month, what then? That's a possibility, right? And if that's the case, and that's why I said your new machine delivery lead time is 5 to 6 months. And you will be accounting, even if you didn't think of it right now, but when you guys as a team sit and brainstorm, what should we do? Somebody in the team is going to come up with this thought that, okay, we are so close to our capacity and so close to our sales in this, that what happens if sales go up? And so as a result, you will be forced to start thinking, oh my God, so should we get two of machine B on day one? Or should we end up losing sales for the period of time that it takes to get this delivery? Right? Or should we develop a vendor specifically in addition to having my own machine and divide the volume? Right? So I have a machine of capacity 500, but I still develop a vendor because I can't just go to the vendor when my head is under the water. He's not going to entertain me at that time. So should I deliberately, even in good times, I make 200 in-house and I make 200 from a vendor, so that if my demand suddenly goes up, then I can actually up the vendor's volume and to adopt that strategy for the operation carried out by machine B and machine C. Okay, so these are all the options that you will need to think through and solutions that you will need to find, it's not numerical. That is what I really wanted to get across through this example, that it's not numerical. And the capacity balancing problem is something that will be there irrespective of whether you're making, whether you're mixing chemicals, or you are machining a part, or you're injection molding something, or you're assembling something. No matter what kind of manufacturing process or product you're engaged in, you are typically going to have a capacity balancing issue. And capacity balancing is also going to be a very troublesome issue when it comes to the variations in market demand and when it comes to growth, because you don't want to be in a situation where you are stuck with a lot of idle capacity. You absolutely don't want to be in a situation where you cannot cater to demand, because that is the worst. Okay, not being able to cater to demand and losing customers on that account are a totally avoidable situation, and a lot of those customers are very hard to win back. So the message here,
and all this will be happening when people are short of money and people.
absolutely.
That's the story of a startup.
Absolutely, right. So it's a difficult and tricky situation, capacity balancing, and it is not numerical. That is the message. Okay, moving on. So if I really summarize everything that we saw in the last few slides, there are certain issues and concerns when it comes to having our own manufacturing, which we have to deal with. The first is, you end up, manufacturing is a big consumer of financial resources. Okay, it's a big bulk consumer of financial resources, and it diverts these resources away from what I call revenue generating activities. And for this, there's a concept, it's a management concept which all of you must be aware of. Sales is called a profit center, and manufacturing is called a cost center. Okay, have you guys never wondered, why is it a highly qualified manufacturing plant head always earns about 60% of a sales head? So I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but if you're not, you should, right? On a one-to-one basis, for equal number of years of experience and theoretically speaking, equal value contribution to the organization, on a 1:1 comparison, a salesperson will earn 30 to 40% more as a basic remuneration as compared to a manufacturing person. Okay, and have you also noticed over the last many years, have we seen how manufacturing is getting pushed out of cities? You don't have manufacturing in cities anymore. All manufacturing has gone to so-called C zones and D zones, where the state or the government offers incentives, offers sales tax rebate, GST rebate, 10-year tax holiday, and all kinds of things, right? So why is that? To bring down the cost. Why? Because manufacturing is considered to be a cost center, and minimizing the cost that it blocks is of paramount interest, and should be of paramount interest to a company, because it diverts these resources away from generating revenue. Okay. Second, capacity balancing issues, as we just saw, it frequently leads to overinvestment, okay, at least for certain periods of time. And the resultant idle capacity is affecting your costing. Okay, so you're actually ending up forced to, if you do technically correct costing from a cost accounting perspective, then you have to account for the idle capacity. So your capacity is 1,000 units a month, you're actually selling 300. The remaining 700 pieces is capacity, which technically the cost of that capacity has to be loaded onto these 300 pieces that you're selling. And if you do costing that way, it will make you really expensive, right? So this is always a debate between the cost accounting method of doing costing and the opportunistic method of looking at it. Okay, but the point is, it's not an easy solution. The reality is there is waste. Okay, whether you look at it from an accounting perspective or not, the reality is the excess investment is idle money, which has been employed. It's money that has been deployed in acquiring the capital asset, but it is not being put to productive use. That is idle capacity, and that's money that could have been spent elsewhere to generate revenue. Okay, that's the aspect you need to keep in mind. And the last and most important is, remember, we spoke about the fact that this is the most uncertain phase. The first 6 months to 18 months is a do or die time. And it's going to be faced with the most significant challenges in terms of, the ability to be competitive. Somebody is going to launch a very similar product. Somebody is going to launch something that is a lot more attractive, or there are going to be some unexpected product failures and a lot of issues coming up on account of that. The point is a lot of uncertainties. And as a result, all of these events will conspire to delay the achievement of revenue goals. So year one, we were supposed to achieve 12 crores. We only did 7. And then year two, we were supposed to go to 22 crores and we were at 14. And this is going to put significant financial pressure on the business, especially if a 12 crore investment was made in the plant. Okay. So all of these are aspects that need to be kept in mind if one is looking at making an investment in manufacturing. So in this context, it obviously looks as if I am driving you guys away and telling you don't invest in manufacturing, right? And in a sense, I am. And we will look at this in a little more detail as we go forward. But there are certain situations where one may have to take this decision to invest. And I would call these as strategic decisions. Okay, where a strategic decision it's a nice way of explaining something that does not make financial sense. Okay, but it is the need of the business. So one of those could be where your product is extremely well differentiated, very strong in the marketplace, but has critical process know-how, which is not otherwise protected by a patent. And if you give that know-how away, it takes away a very crucial differentiator that you have, and somebody can just replicate what you're doing. So irrespective of what agreements you may have in place with your vendor, you may not feel comfortable in giving this know-how away. And so that may be one situation where you would go ahead and decide to make the investment. Okay. The second situation where you may go ahead and decide to make the investment is where your product is very, very well differentiated, has a very strong competitive advantage, very strong value proposition, combined with a really handsome, sizable market size. So maybe a 4,000 crore, 5,000 crore, 8,000 crore market size, and something that you have come up with as a product which is very well differentiated from the competition. Okay, and you are really, because of that, the entire group is very optimistic. You're targeting maybe a 400 crore revenue in the first year. And then it may be a relatively straightforward decision to say we are looking at something really big and we should go ahead and make the investment to make sure our costs are the lowest. So in this situation of where making large capital investments in manufacturing is not the easiest of decisions to take on day one for a startup, what are the options available? And I think there was a question about options, and that's the stage we are coming to in the presentation now. So what are the options? So you can either do comprehensive outsourcing, where you fully outsource the manufacturing activity as a contract to a contract manufacturer, and you also outsource the logistics and supply chain activities, which means you don't have an organization at all. So all the way, everything from moving of raw material and components from third-party sources goes to your contract manufacturer. The contract manufacturer does the complete production on your behalf, and then also does the logistics activity, has a finished goods store, and supplies products to your distributors. And all that you do is to manage your brand and to manage your sales, revenue, and marketing. Okay, this is a typical model that is followed by a lot of large fashion houses. And you hear about all these Italian companies and Gucci and Versace, and you hear about all these fancy names. None of them have a 1 square foot of manufacturing infrastructure. The standard mode of operation is all that they have is very high-end design and specification and quality control, right? and physical manufacturing is all happening at third parties, right? Including all the way up to shipment of finished products to retail stores. So that is comprehensive outsourcing. there are implications to all of this, which we'll see as we go ahead. Nothing is as simple as it seems, and we'll understand implications as we move on. The second option is manufacturing outsourcing alone. So just the physical manufacturing aspect of converting raw material to finished product is what is outsourced to a contract manufacturer, but you retain all the logistics and supply chain activities in-house. That's option 2. And the third option is you have a lean manufacturing in-house with a lot of vendor development for parts, sub-assemblies, but your final operations, finishing and packaging is what you set up your manufacturing for, and you manage the logistics and the supply chain. So these are the 3 different ways in which you can look at it, which can balance the requirements of the levels of investment that you need to make to sort of control these investments and to minimize the amount of capital that gets blocked in this activity.
Ravi,
So
can you give an example of the second 2?
I am actually going into detail on each of these.
Okay, good. Yeah.
So let's look at comprehensive manufacturing outsourcing. So what does this mean? So this is where, so let's say that, let's take our favorite spine implant company again, right? So you find a third-party manufacturer who will buy the raw material on your behalf from a source that you specify, who gets the raw material into his house, who will carry out tests on the raw material as per testing specifications you have provided to him, who will then carry out all the processing operations, the machining operations, the finishing operations, the anodizing and everything that is needed to create a finished spine implant. Then you may have developed either individually or with him 3 or 4 different sources for instruments. And those 3 or 4 different sources together will supply the complete instrument set, right? Now, those 3 or 4 sources will ship the instruments to this contract manufacturer. He will carry out the incoming inspection, he will carry out any repairs, or he will do the communication with those sources if there is a problem. He will take care of acceptance, rejection, and all of those things. And he will do the assembly at his end of a final instrument set, consisting of X number of instruments, whatever that may be, to specifications which you have provided. He has already been, now we already spoke about the implant. He is done taking care of all the manufacturing operations. He is taking care of the finishing operations, the anodizing, all of those, the cleaning, the ultrasonic cleaning, passivation, everything is being done by him till the implant is a final implant, which he then also stores to inventory levels which you have specified based on a anticipated market demand which you have communicated. And then as you are getting orders, all you're doing is you are controlling the end market. You have orders from various dealers, and you actually get him to ship the orders directly to the dealers based on the shipment schedule that you provide, right? So this is a comprehensive outsourcing example where your partner does everything, the complete supply chain and the complete manufacturing activity. Now, so I've said this is easier said than done. So why is it easier said than done? Because if doing all of these involves a 10 crore investment and creating an organization with a monthly salary overhead of say 40 lakhs a month, then you don't want to do it because of uncertainty. Your contract manufacturer is going to have exactly the same amount of uncertainty, right? So what is going to make him make this investment? Because you are not in a position to provide him with an absolute written commitment on the offtake. And you cannot provide that commitment because you yourself, if you had that level of confidence in the numbers and the volumes that will result, you would do it yourself, right? So that's why this is easier said than done. So in a situation like this, how would you find a manufacturing partner who can be a contract manufacturer for you? So this involves hunting out and finding a company, a manufacturing company which operates as a contract manufacturer and who has spare capacity of the type that you require. Okay. Now, the other aspect is coming back, just before we move into this, is it's also very challenging to find a single partner who will also take care of the supply chain activity and also take care of the manufacturing activity. Because contract manufacturers typically will focus on the manufacturing aspect. Supply chain, and especially distribution and the logistics it involves is going to require different staffing and different competencies. So usually finding a single partner to do both is rare. So which means you will probably have to find two if you want to outsource comprehensive, which is double the headache. So coming back, sticking to the manufacturing aspect alone, your ideal partner has spare capacity, which means he has machines that are not fully occupied, or he has infrastructure that is not fully occupied by whatever activity he is engaged in today. This is the most ideal situation. Okay, finding a partner of this type is what you need to do. Now, a partner like this is still going to expect some volume commitments, but he is also going to be cognizant of the fact that his idle capacity will get occupied, and that is beneficial to him. The other thing you need to remember with reference to a contract manufacturer is regulatory requirements, especially if you are in healthcare, if you're doing medical devices or medical products, then this contract manufacturer will need to have at a minimum an ISO 13485, and he would also require to have a CDSU approval in the Indian context to enable a loan license. Now, by doing all of these things, what you should certainly expect is a contract manufacturer is not doing all this work out of charity. He has made significant capital investments, which involves business risk, and he is going to expect a return commensurate to his risk. And so the cost of goods, which is the manufactured product price that you will pay, is typically going to be between 40 to 60% higher than what you would achieve in-house. And that is the cost of the risk that somebody else is taking and the risk that you avoid. Now, in all of this, there is something called an outsourcing partner paradox. Okay, and if this was a classroom, I would have loved to have a discussion and sort your opinions, but unfortunately, that's not going to happen in the online format. So what's the outsourcing partner paradox? The paradox is the most ideal outsourcing partner for you is your competitor. So if you reflect on this statement a little bit, you'll find that your competitor who is making a product which is very similar to yours, with similar materials, with a similar function, and providing a similar utility to the customer, is the one who is most likely to have manufacturing capacities exactly as you require, and is also the one most likely to have spare capacity if he is an established player in the market and he doesn't want to deal with sudden spikes in demand. A partner of this type is most likely to be a company of this type is most likely to be your ideal manufacturing partner in this situation. And it's paradoxical because he is your competitor. Now believe me, it is very hard to imagine a situation where you actually buy a finished product from a competitor. But I am waiting for the day when in India we overcome this issue. Okay, it's very common in the West. There are companies who are partners on the back end and competitors on the front end. Okay, and it happened, and now you see a lot of this happening pretty openly in the automobile industry as well. Okay, so you have lots of examples now where companies realize that it makes sense to collaborate where high costs are involved, and so you have common manufacturing facilities, but you have different marketing and different branding. So Skoda and Volkswagen are theoretically one company, but then they are differently badged and differently marketed, and they have marketing and sales targets where they are openly competing with each other in the marketplace, right? But at the back end, Skoda and Volkswagen have eventually merged to practically become a single company with common manufacturing infrastructure. Now, that is the extent to which it can go. But the way it begins this is the way it begins, where companies start understanding that I am your competitor in the marketplace. It does not mean I cannot be your partner at the back end for manufacturing. Okay. So this is just a thought I want to leave you with, where, this is you are the new generation, and some of you may break the old mold, and some of you would probably blaze a trail going forward, enabling different ways of looking at these issues, which the previous generation hasn't done. The other aspect which you need to keep in mind is, if there is a single contract partner, there's always going to be a relationship of dependence. It is mutual. If you do not manage to provide the volumes you committed, then any investments your partner has made is going to be at risk. And if your partner, for whatever reason, one reason or the other, suddenly says that I am unable to start giving you product from next month, you are left high and dry. And that is a risk which you are going to be open to if you go in for a contract manufacturing partner. And that's a risk which one has to live with for a certain period of time till you develop a certain amount of volume or scale. And as I said earlier, of course, this may not be an option if IP or process know-how is at stake. So this was the first option that we looked at. The second option, which I believe is the more likely option for many of you, is to have create a lean manufacturing infrastructure in-house. So what does this mean? It means you focus on only the final operations which are least capital intensive. So you look at assembly, you look at packaging, you look at finished goods stores, you look at logistics. So finished goods stores and logistics, so that you control the interaction with the market, the distributors, the channel, all of that is crucial. It's actually IP. Okay, that knowledge is actually IP in a way, because knowledge of the channel partners that you have created is not something you want to easily give away. So you control all of that. You control the interaction with the market. But for this, you have to develop very strong sourcing and vendor development. Okay. And you have to have put really strong processes in place for what is called supplier management. Now, there was a question on that earlier on. And I think the question was, what kind of metrics you should put in place for supplier management? Now, to answer a question like that is a half-day session, so I'm not going into the details. Okay. But essential that you need to have a strong supply management process in place if you're going to adopt this route. And I'm going to speak about the competencies a little while later. Now, taking this approach, where you are vendorizing a lot of the physical manufacturing, which involves capital equipment, you may have 1, 2, 3 different vendors doing different things. The cost of goods is going to be lower than full outsourcing, but it's still going to be higher than you manufacturing yourself in-house, maybe by a factor of 20 to 40%. Because keep in mind, the investments your vendor makes are not going to be very different from the investments you would make if you were manufacturing, and he has to make a profit as well, right? And this is one of the areas where you can start working on risk minimization owing to dependence at a much earlier stage. You would need to have, and you must have, a strategy of duplicating suppliers wherever possible, wherever the volumes allow. And also a strategy of slowly adding in-house capacity to minimize external dependence as volumes increase. A so-called Atmanirbhar approach, as you start having more confidence in what the market, in the market traction that your product is achieving. So this is a good point before we come to the last segment to stop for a few questions.
Ravi, how many slides do you have?
I think 3 more.
Okay. So another 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I just wanted to, any questions, please? By the way, in the meantime, they were just going back. Okay, there is a question here. Is failure of batch or faulty product lot possibility also considered while deciding unit pricing, or these events unpredicted losses?
So this is all a function of how you will, it's one of the aspects for negotiation between you and your vendor. All of this is negotiated. Who deals with faulty product? who is responsible, who pays. A loss is a loss.
Okay. There were, you remember, maybe this is the time to get to the previous questions about how do you
exactly.
choose the vendor and how much
Yes.
you have discussed how much to do in-house versus outsource and the logic behind it. Perhaps a little bit on also how to choose vendors also you have covered. The paradox as well.
Yes.
And also the sequence of scaling you have covered in terms of when to scale and how to scale and so on, right?
Yeah.
You want to add anything there, because those were some of the questions from the previous lot.
I don't know. I'm not able to see the earlier questions which were there right at the beginning. So maybe can.
Yeah, I'm actually telling you some of those, which is so one was on data and confidentiality when you engage vendors and CROs and so on, which I think you addressed. Also, you might want to comment on that, and how to choose vendors and how much in-house versus how much outsourcing.
Right. So at the outset, okay, when you are in a pre-launch stage, so if some of you have had experience in dealing with vendors, you go to a vendor, what is the first question that you face? What are the volumes?
Sorry, repeat that.
That's the first question that is thrown at you. The first question that is thrown at you is, what are the volumes?
Yeah.
Irrespective of what kind of a product or a part or component or process or whatever you go to a vendor for, the first thing that a vendor or a manufacturer is interested in is, what are the volumes? How many units per month? How many units per week? How many units per year? So it's and typically, remember, the when you are a startup, and especially if you are a medical startup, then compared to conventional industry, our volumes are always a minuscule fraction of what an automobile industry volumes do. So in an automobile industry, they are used to 200,000 pieces per month. Now, in the case of a spine implant, to achieve 200,000 screws to be sold may probably take 5 to 6 years, and that is if you do well, right? So that is the kind of difference you are looking at from a volume perspective. You are not going to sell 40,000 defibrillators a month, or if you have some point of care diagnostic device, which is a very niche indication for a very niche disease, then you are not really going to be selling. You may, if you are lucky, sell about 5,000 units in the whole year, right? If you do well. So, but what are the scales that vendors are typically used to? They are used to a single 1 or 2 machines which are producing on demand the volumes typically which an automobile industry would expect is upwards of 1 lakh pieces a month. Those are that is what they mean, and that is what is in their mind when they ask this question about volumes. So this puts you in a very awkward situation, because no matter what your response is, your vendor is always going to look at you with a huge amount of disappointment, and some of them may tell you, no, this is not practical, I am not interested. And I don't know if some of you as startups have faced this experience as well. So how does one overcome this situation? Overcoming this situation, believe me, is very easily possible. The reason why many of us fall into this situation of engaging in this nature of discussion with the vendor is because we don't take the effort to communicate to the vendor what is this business, what is the medical business, and where do we stand in this business, and what do we do, right? And what are the volumes today, and how does this business work, and what is the contribution that we are trying to make, and how you can be a part of that contribution. So it requires a lot of communication to actually get a vendor on your side to be able to see things the way you see it, and to be able to send a subtle message to the vendor that the margins that he will be able to make with this business are going to be okay. So for example, in the automobile business, all those massive volumes of 1 lakh pieces and 2 lakh pieces a month, they come at a cost. So do you guys know what that cost is? That cost is that they are the actual profitability that is allowed to them by the OEM is just enough to make his two ends meet, because the costing is done down to the last level, including the scrap that is generated in the process and the value for which the scrap will be sold, and that being deducted from the cost. That is the extent to which purchasing departments negotiate with these vendors. And so it's extremely hard for them to be profitable, right? And that's going to be very different for them in the situation where so you have to communicate with them that this is an opportunity for them to diversify, to get into something which can be a little bit more profitable, and which can be a diversification away from the low volume business they are in, from the high volume, low profit business that they are engaged in. So this kind of communication is very crucial when you are looking at vendors, because you may also be wanting certain vendors to make investments for you. And one of those investments may not necessarily be in the form of production capacity, but it would be an investment in the form of a quality certification. It may be effort to get an ISO 13485. Okay. So vendor communication is a very crucial aspect of being able to develop vendors. The other aspect is about how do you distribute capacity? How much in-house, how much? So it's not about how much. Okay, there's no sanctity to the ratio. Whether you do 50, for the purpose of argument, 50-50 is as good as anything else. Okay, remember, you don't have the luxury of massive volumes to start with. So you have small volumes. So 50-50 is as good as anything else when it comes to distributing. The important principle here is how you manage your risk. That is very important. And the more you are dependent on a solitary vendor for anything, the more at risk you are. If that vendor either suddenly starts producing defective parts, or if that vendor has a problem there's a flood, and his entire factory is flooded and all his machines conk off, and he says that I am ruined, until insurance pays I cannot restart. So any such incident that can happen can throw your working out of gear. And therefore, what is important is risk management. And you can do risk management in any way. Most obvious thing is, do not be dependent on a single source as far as possible. This is the operating guideline. Don't be dependent on a single source. So multiple sources can be partially in-house, partially vendor. It can be two vendors. Or in a worse situation, that's a luxury you may not have on day one when you begin your operations, because your volumes are small. So you make the choice to take the risk, and you live with that risk on a knife edge till such point of time you are able to take actions to minimize the risk. Out of all the various risks that you are taking in getting into the business, this becomes one more risk. But you must be alive to the fact that this is the risk, and you must have a plan in place that as soon as we meet these milestones and these marks, this is how we are going to develop our phases to gradually reduce our risk. That has to be the approach.
Ravi, let us continue since we are going to run out of time.
Yes, we are.
So let's continue, please.
Okay, this is where we have a quick poll, really quick. Okay. We have 3 questions. We'll go one by one. And thank you, Mugdha. There's the link on the screen. So we'll do this really quickly. For fully outsourced manufacturing, who is responsible for a manufacturing defect? A, contract manufacturer, B, OEM. So you would answer just A or B.
On the Mentimeter link. Yeah. So.
Yeah, the Mentimeter link is there on the chat box as usual. Contract manufacturing leads 13.6, 14.6, 15.6.
I think people want to put the onus on the contract manufacturers.
Yes, yes. Okay, no problem. Shall we move on to the next one?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, moving on to the next question. In partially outsourced manufacturing, if a product fails due to a manufacturing process carried out incorrectly by a vendor, who is responsible? OEM or vendor? OEM is A, vendor is B.
Another
If a
link
product
has been put up.
fails, yeah, another link has been put up on the chat box. Please go to that link and share your thoughts. Partially outsourced manufacturing, product fails due to manufacturing process incorrectly carried out by the vendor. Who is responsible, OEM or vendor? Okay, similar to the last one. Okay. Okay, shall we move on to the next one? There's just one more. Very similar responses we got here. In fully outsourced manufacturing, this is the last one. If there is a packaging failure, now remember this is fully outsourced manufacturing, okay, which means your contract manufacturer is also doing your packaging. There's a packaging failure leading to loss of sterility just before use. Who is responsible, OEM or contract manufacturer? Okay, this is interesting. Now OEM has gone up to 11. Okay. So you believe that if it's, so more of you believe that if the failure is closer to the customer, then the OEM is responsible. Okay, that's interesting. Fine. 14.8. Okay, good. I think we can move on.
Yeah.
All right. That's really interesting in terms of responses. Okay. Come on, why is the slide not moving ahead?
Click on the slide, please, before when you click. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So as an OEM, this is the most important thing for many of you to get. As an OEM, there are certain responsibilities which are primary and fundamental to being an OEM. And the correct answer for all of those three earlier questions was the OEM is responsible. It's your name, it's your brand, you are the legal owner. The customer, the market, everybody perceives that the product is yours. You are buying a product, you are buying a Mahindra car, or you're buying a Maruti car, or you're buying a Toyota car. For you as a customer, it is Toyota who's responsible. Okay. Any product that you buy as a customer, it is the owner of the brand, it is the original equipment manufacturer who is dealing with you, who is selling the product to you, who is 100% responsible for every action that is taken under his name. So each and every action that your vendor carries out, your vendor is nameless and faceless. Your contract manufacturer is nameless and faceless. Making sure that he does what he is supposed to do is your job. Okay, and it is a little difficult to accept initially. But this is the concept of responsibility that you need to first internalize if you have to be successful in being able to create an organization which is dependent on outsourcing, because it means you have to, once you accept that you are responsible, then and only then you develop the frame of mind to discharge that responsibility. And you may save the investments, you may save the capital investment of 5 crores, 10 crores, 20 crores in putting up your own manufacturing, but it is not, it's not a free card that you save that money. Instead of doing that, you have to do other things, and that's what we will speak about. But if I have to summarize very succinctly what an OEM is really responsible for. An OEM is responsible for quality and reliability. And I think all of you understand, right, that quality is different and reliability is different. Reliability is quality expressed over a long period of time. Okay, quality is when a product is fit to fulfill its purpose, but reliability is that same quality expressed over a long period of time. Okay, that's why they are different. An OEM is responsible for product safety and for efficacy. It does what it is supposed to do. From a medical or a regulatory standpoint, it may be a clinical efficacy. You are, of course, this is much easier to appreciate. You are, of course, responsible for customer service and satisfaction. So whether your vendor did something wrong, or your contract manufacturer did something wrong, or your logistics partner muffed up, or DHL did not deliver, it doesn't matter. Final customer service and satisfaction starts and ends with you. So you are completely responsible for the actions of your contractors, for the actions of your employees. It's your name and your reputation that is on the line. And of course, the most obvious one, you are responsible for all compliances. And many times, even compliances on behalf of your partners, compliances on behalf of your dealers, whether your dealers carry out the necessary compliances or not. So, for example, the drug regulator, if you're selling a medical device, is going to insist that you will make supplies only to a medical dealer or medical distributor who has a drug selling license. So whether he has it or not also becomes your responsibility. So that's one example of how compliance is. So quality, reliability, safety, efficacy, customer service, satisfaction, compliances, all you as an OEM are absolutely and primarily responsible. And if you as an OEM have to successfully manage all these responsibilities, you need to build necessary capabilities and competencies in your organization and within your team. So like I said, you may not make significant investments in manufacturing and operations, but you need to make significant investments in people to build these capabilities and competencies if you have to succeed in the marketplace with a minimum of investment and creating third-party organizations to support you. So what is it that you need to create as capabilities? I'm going to rush through a little bit now on this, the last couple of slides. For quality, reliability, performance, it is not enough to develop a design. It is not enough to develop a model. It's not enough to develop a working prototype. Defining detailed product specifications, either in the form of drawings, either in the form of specification notes, or whatever, is a skill by itself, and it's a skill which you as a designer may not possess. And you may need specialists in your team to be able to create the kind of detailed product and raw material specifications that are necessary. Defining detailed methods of quality inspection and test, and documenting them in a manner that is easy to fulfill, easy to understand for a third party, is a very crucial aspect. And you require specific capabilities, competencies, and skills within your organization to be able to do this. The most ideal situation is you want to change from vendor A in Baroda to vendor B in Frankfurt. And all you do is you send the file. You send a big, thick file, which may be a 12 MB file as a soft copy, or maybe a box file of documents. And that is all that the vendor requires. He doesn't have to make a single phone call or a single Zoom call for clarification. This is your ultimate holy grail to achieve the extent of documentation that a vendor or a supplier needs. Every single question he may have about specification, about what needs to be produced, what is the material, what are the allowable tolerances, what are the allowable variation, what is acceptable, what is rejectable, everything is specified in tremendous detail. Okay, and these are capabilities that do not come automatically. And if you are the creative type, which is what you will be as founders of startups, then I am telling you 90% of the time, these are capabilities you personally will not have. You need to build the capabilities in your organization to create these kind of documentation. Capabilities. You may not do manufacturing yourself, but you need to have somebody in your team who understands manufacturing processes well, who can critically analyze the processes your contract manufacturing partner or your vendor is proposing to carry out on your product. And you should as an organization be able to participate in the risk management. You should be able to analyze what are the risks or what can go wrong. You should be able to critically analyze if process validation is required for any of the processes, and how and if necessary, develop those protocols. You should have the ability in your organization to carry out a detailed audit, and whether your selected vendor has the capability to meet the quality requirements, the reliability requirements which you have. And like I said, all of this is a function of, it is accompanied and complemented by strong ability to document all of this. You should have in your organization the ability to actively participate in manufacturing process risk analysis, or a PFMEA, a process failure mode effect analysis, to analyze during a manufacturing process what are the various things that can happen which will cause a product to not be manufactured to specification, and how are these process risks to be controlled, or what are the checkpoints or the measurements or the inspections to be put in place. Okay, so this is a process risk analysis, and you may not be doing manufacturing, like I said, but you need to have at least one individual on your team who's going to control all of this and who is knowledgeable in this area, and to actively supervise at the vendor's end or at the contract manufacturer's end how manufacturing risks will be reduced, and if necessary, how validations will be carried out. From a safety and efficacy aspect, and this is more important for those whose products come within the regulatory ambit, everything that is customer facing, of course, is going to be crucial, but from a regulatory perspective, documenting and recording complaints, investigating complaints, doing trend analysis of complaints, ensuring corrective and preventive action, whether the part is made by you, whether it is partially made by you, assembled by you, parts made by 4 different vendors, it does not matter. As far as regulatory authority is concerned, you are the legal manufacturer. So whatever under you, the chain, you are ultimately responsible for. And if a vendor has to execute a corrective action, then ensuring that the vendor does it is your responsibility. The other aspect where you have to build capability is, this is getting more and more important as time passes. It's not very crucial if you're selling in India today. If you are exporting, you're thinking of Europe, then creating an organization for clinical and post-market surveillance. How is and this is very, very, very medical specific, of course, how is my product doing clinically? What are the kind of complaints we are seeing? Is it achieving its intended use? Is it fulfilling its purpose? And is it fulfilling its purpose on par with other state-of-the-art products or other contemporary products which can be considered its peers? Okay, answering these questions is very important, and regulatory agencies expect that you have the organization to be able to handle and answer these questions. Clinical and post-market surveillance, all regulatory agencies expect periodic updates, and these update frequencies are reducing as time passes. Now they have come to 1 year. It used to be 3 years and 5 years earlier. So post-market clinical follow-up, complaint history, complaint databases, how other products of my type are doing in the marketplace, what is the literature saying, updating all of this at the end of every year, carrying out or dictating the pace of design changes, getting those done, updating risk management, updating the instructions for use. All of this requires a capable and competent organization, may be supported by an outsourced partner, but nevertheless requires at least 1 or 2 strong members created within the organization. Okay, so this is the other aspect of internal capabilities that need to be created. Like I said earlier, aligning vendors with your story and motivating vendors to accept low initial volumes with a carrot of getting into a new business and a diversification which will have better profitability. You need to develop the ability to tell this story, and you and maybe a few of you who are going to be responsible to develop vendors and contract manufacturers. Okay, that's going to be very crucial in your sourcing and procurement. That is a very strong part of the organization which you have to create. Creating processes to track supplier management, the supplier performance. creating metrics which are going to influence how your product performs in the marketplace. So it may be quality, it may be reliability, it may be on-time delivery, it may be specific quality index parameters. So you have to decide the metrics, and those metrics are going to vary on a case-by-case basis. And if you find it difficult, you can probably get hold of a consultant who will help you to do that. But developing a strong supplier management capability and developing the processes is going to be very, very important for you as an organization if you're going to rely on outsourcing. And of course, continuous communication with the supplier, providing feedback, insisting on continuous improvement is all going to happen if you have that element in your organization which takes ownership of these functions. Okay, obviously you, a couple of co-founders are not going to do all of this. The last element, which is very crucial, very, very crucial and often missed, is managing demand and supply and sales forecasting. Okay, developing these processes on day one is extremely important. And I'm going to move to the next slide to tell you one way of doing this. You need to tie your operations to your revenue goals. One of the unfortunate things that has happened in many, many organizations, and it has happened globally over many years, is operations functions as a separate silo. They manufacture stuff and they think my job is manufacturing. And sales and marketing are functioning in a separate silo and they think my job is to sell. Okay, and these two silos would very rarely communicate with each other. This thinking has changed over the last 20, 30 years. It's percolating gradually to many organizations, but this has to speed up. Okay, it's not as fast as it needs to be. And particularly Indian homegrown organizations are weak on this aspect. And you guys as startups have the opportunity to not fall into this trap on day one. And this is to start developing on day one, the day you commercialize, you put into place what is called the sales and operations plan. Now, what is sales and operations plan? It's nothing but on day one, in the first few months, it is nothing but a monthly coordination meeting involving sales, supply chain, finance, CEO, and operations head. All the 5-6 people who are together responsible to ensure that whatever the goals, whatever the revenue goals or the unit goals or the sales targets for the month, the entire team owns that target as a single team. Okay, so it is not that the sales said that I booked orders for X, but you were only able to supply 1/3 of X, and as a result we lost. The entire team has to understand that you cannot have one function winning and the other function losing, because at the end of the day, the organization as a whole loses. So it's very important to create this kind of, and the way to make sure that these 5 functions start functioning in harmony is to develop this process at the outset. It starts with a forecast. And yes, everybody will have this problem that we have no idea what's going to happen. We have no historical data. We have no idea what we can sell. It's all these objections and problems will be there on day one, but it doesn't matter. You have to start with a forecast. And everybody has to understand, and you have to understand that the forecast is going to be imperfect to start with. But that's where it starts. And there has to be a commitment that this process will be refined on a continuous basis. And probably 5 years from the day you launch, your forecast will achieve something like plus minus 20% accuracy. But it doesn't matter. What matters is you start the forecasting process, you start the communication process, and you start having a shared goal and a shared objective. And the entire team of maybe a very small team right now, 3 or 4 people, but the whole team, each one handling a different function, understands that it does not matter if I achieve what I said I was to achieve, but if my team member in operations could not deliver, it doesn't help. And the operations guy is going to say that if you had forecasted even a probability that next month the number would be this, I would have given this to you. Now, to avoid this situation is where you have a constant communication. Okay, you have all the functions, getting the functions and getting functional leaders to constantly talk to each other in a formalized process. Okay, and you as a leader and you as a CEO or a managing director leading the business, this is going to be one of the most crucial and most ill-attended aspects of ensuring that an organization succeeds in the marketplace. So that's it from me. I'm sorry I ran 25 minutes late, but I hope it was worthwhile in terms of time. And if we have time and if we have any other questions, I'll be glad to take them.
Yes, Ravi, thank you very much. Actually, I probably brought in too many questions.
Oh, not at all, but very useful questions. So it helps to clarify. You're most welcome.
Okay. So there are a few questions here. Let's just close on the note. One is, of course, one comment is that, when you're dealing with a vendor, although the loss at the customer side is OEM's loss, financial loss probably can be written up to make the vendor responsible.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely. Like I said, it's negotiable. Yeah. But all of this is negotiable. But obviously, none of these are as simple and straightforward as we make it out to be.
Yeah.
And that's why I am hesitating to give you a clear answer. It can go either way.
Yeah.
Because the more conditions you impose on the vendor, the more the vendor is going to put counter conditions on you.
Yeah.
That's why it's negotiable.
Yeah. So Mukta has put out the form, feedback form. So while we are discussing further, people can start filling it up. What was the FGS on the last?
I'm sorry. That's finished goods store. Finished goods store. I'm sorry.
Finished goods store. Okay. There's also a question on are there insurance companies involved in de-risking something like this in terms of de-risking the entire process? And of course, it'll come at a cost. But
yeah. I suppose you can insure conventionally against fire, flood, acts of God, destruction, vandalism, theft, all of that. But insuring against, you can insure for product liability. Even that in India is difficult. I don't know, because I remember looking for insurance companies to offer product liability insurance, and they did not have products at that time. Maybe they have it now. But business risk, I'm sure it is covered. But I don't know, they'll probably make you pay an arm and a leg as premium.
Ravi, there is a case where, there are companies now who offer you, say, for example, venture debt fund.
Okay.
And that debt is insured by a third party.
Okay.
So, and that is usually for your working capital, right? So in a way, it is indirectly doing that.
Yeah.
Okay. So there are venture debt funds which operate, and some of our, in fact, one of our entrepreneurs we had invited to the panel, and the entrepreneur panel had mentioned that also.
What are the kind of premiums that they charge?
Those details I don't know yet. I will tell you, but I can find out easily.
It's obviously proportionate to risk, and if the risk is perceived to be high, then the premium is going to be proportional.
Yeah. So I'll pull that out for you because we do have a case.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Any final questions, or can we close now? I think Mukta, do you want to take over now? Thank you, Ravi. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. I'm sorry I ran out of time, and I hope you found the session interesting and enjoyable.
Yeah.